Hello, John Talley here with Partzilla.com. Today I'm going to walk you through the process to replace the clutch on our 2005 Honda CRF450R. Now don't let it bother you that we've already got the engine removed. You don't have to do that. This is just part of a larger project on this particular machine, and now it's time for us to do the clutch. But before we get started, let's step over and look at the parts that I decided to use to do this project. Now, as you know, I'm a big fan of OEM, but this time we're going to go with the kit from Wiseco. Now, they have some really high quality parts, and I decided I wanted to try something a little bit different for this build. Now, this is a couple of different part numbers from Wiseco that all work together very well for this particular unit. There will be special tools that will be required to pull this off, and I will call those out as we go along. So we've got those all assembled. Let's step over and I'll show you how to put it together. So we're getting ready to install our forged clutch basket from Wiseco, and it has a couple of different advantages over the stock setup. As you can see, well, the stock one, she's pretty much worn out. You can see these steps on the fingers of the basket and the engagement. I never rode this machine, but I know it had to be horrible. The other advantage it has is it's going to be lighter and it's going to be stronger. But we do have to get a couple of pieces off of the OEM piece and transfer them over to the Wiseco unit. Basically, we're after that gear. Now, there's three different ways you can accomplish this. You can grind off these rivets to get it to remove, you can drill them out, or you can press them out. And just for fun, I'm going to show you how to do each technique. So let's head over to the press out a couple, and then we'll do the drill. Then we'll also use a side grinder to grind off the heads. So let's go. What I've got is just a socket, and basically I'm just lining it up to where I've got a cavity into which we can push that rivet out. And then we're just going to use a drift to push it through. A little bit of a balancing act, but I think we can do this. That is a lot of pressure, and she's not moving, and I'm getting nervous. It's bending it. The Wiseco manual says you can push these rivets out. I'm thinking that's not the case for the Honda. So we're going to head over to the drill press and drill these out. Then we'll also try the side grinder as well. But if it's bending that, that's more pressure than I want to deal with. So let's head to the drill press. I'm using a 5/16 drill. And what we're aiming for is just to get mainly this top section of this rivet drilled away. That way we can release the plate. And actually each one of these have a little bit of a mark that shows the center. And that's what we're going to go for. That's all we're after. I was a little bit off, but it was still enough to get it. I can go ahead and tell you that the drill press is going to be the best way to do this. So we'll go ahead and do, well, all except one, and then we'll use that side grinder just for the last one, just for fun. Okay, last but not least, we're going to use a side grinder just to take off that last one. Not nearly as accurate as using the drill press, but I wanted to show you a different option. Now guys, I went through the trouble of using the drill press and drilled it out very accurately, but the truth is that we're not going to be using this outer plate anyway. The Wiseco unit comes with a new retaining plate. So you really didn't have to be that accurate. The big thing is just getting those rivets, the heads of them at least, machined off or drilled off. That way you can pop off that plate. And that is what we were after. Guys, I'm just leaving everything in the same orientation from where it came apart. That way I make sure that I transfer it over to the other one correctly. Important that we get all these shavings out of the way. So we certainly don't want to transfer any of that into the engine. And I'll just remark it once it dries, because this is the side facing into the engine. So we've got our outer gear. Now we need to get this inner gear pressed out. And I believe there's also a washer in there as well. But at any rate, we're going to use our press to do that. You just want to make sure the driver just fits to the inside of the teeth, because we don't want to damage those. All right, here we go. There we go. Bingo. So that's everything we need. Since we're here, let's go ahead and press it on to the Wiseco unit. And I don't want to damage this area because this is actually pretty thin. So what we're going to do is put a socket on this side to drive it into. Yeah. She's seated. Now the next part is even easier. We put in the new cushions, which Wiseco provides, the plate, and then we have the locking screws that actually already have Loctite on them, and I believe we torqued that to 62 inch-pounds. While we are reassembling the clutch basket, let's go ahead and soak our clutch plates, I'd say for about an hour, and at that point they'll be ready to get installed. Now I'm going with the HP trans fluid from Honda. I know there's a lot of debate as to what works best. I happen to believe this is the correct stuff to use in the transmission, so that's what I'm going with. And if you feel differently, you can use whatever you would like. We'll leave that to marinate and pull those out later. Next, let's get our cushions in on the basket, and they only go in one way. So if you have to force it, you're doing it wrong. Now we can get our gear that we removed earlier. Put on the new retaining plate, and instead of rivets, they send these Torx head screws that are already ready to go with the Loctite, and then we're going to torque them to 62 inch-pounds, which works out to a little over 5 foot-pounds. As a matter of fact, Wiseco even sends you the correct size Torx bit to install them. We're just going to bottom them out with this and then come back and torque them. Now, let's get them set to 5 foot-pounds. Well, now that we've got our gear attached to the clutch basket, let's go ahead and get it installed. Now what you're going to have is this back bushing, this needle bearing, and of course that goes back up inside the gear. Now just rotate that around until it engages with the gear. Next, let's go around our case and make sure that we don't have any oil on our surface. Make sure it's clean. Also, if you've got this little pass-through with an O-ring, get it in place. And we've got one dowel there, and our other dowel decided it would stay in the outer case. So let me get that pulled out, get it installed, and then that'll hold our gasket in place. And then install that outer cover. And then when you're doing this, you want to make sure that you align this with the slot inside of that gear. Just give a little tap at that dowel and it should seat right down. Make sure that you're engaged, and it is. That's it. Now we had already laid out our bolts in the same order that they need to go back in, starting right here, which has this little guide. I usually get them all started, then I'll come back around, get them seated, and then we're going to torque them down. I think that's everybody. And we're going to take these to 7 foot-pounds. Okay, next let's go ahead and get our housing back on. Don't forget your O-ring and this dowel. And at the very bottom, this particular bolt has one of those copper crush washers. Make sure it's in place or you're going to have a leak. We'll take those to 7 foot-pounds as well. Okay, let's start getting this clutch together. First, you have a lower thrust washer. Now, you can bring in the clutch center. Next, you have this retaining washer with these tabs. You want to make sure the tabs, or this little slot right here, lines up with this protrusion. There's one on either side. Another thrust washer, and then our nut. And this is a 27 millimeter. And now to get enough torque on this, we want to bring it back perpendicular to where the stand will really hold it still. Get our clutch holder on there. I like using the one from Henson. Then we're going to torque it to 59 foot-pounds. There we go. Nice unit. Next, let's reach in here and we're going to bend these tabs where they lock that nut in place. Okay, that didn't go in anywhere. Now let's go ahead and readjust our engine stand so we can get our plates in without making too much of a mess. Here we go. And these are non-directional. For whatever reason, I've always liked keeping the notches lined up. Just personal preference, but not absolutely necessary. Okay, let's get in our lift rod along with this collar. Then make sure you've got your bearing oiled up. And then there's one washer that goes on the outside of that. Now we're ready for our pressure plate and our springs with our bolts. Now the Wiseco springs are non-directional, so they can go in either way. And we're going to tighten these down in stages, and then the final torque is going to be 9 foot-pounds. Let's start bringing them down. When you're tightening these down, just do it in a general crisscross pattern. Okay, now we're going to torque these to 9 foot-pounds. Now you can just put it in gear and that should be enough to hold it, but I don't even have the gear shifter on it yet. So what I'm going to use, just this pin casing, plastic soft, bring it in here and that should be enough to hold it. I mean, 9 foot-pounds, that's really not all that much. Next, let's get on our Wiseco cover. A little bit of a tip here. Take grease and put it down inside of this groove, then put your O-ring in. Otherwise, it's going to try to pop out. All these are the same length, except for that top one, of course. And these are going to go to 7 foot-pounds. Well, all right, guys, that's going to wrap up this video. Well, listen, if you need any parts for your machine and or tools, why don't you come see us at Partzilla.com and we can get you taken care of. If you have any questions or comments, leave them in the section below and I'll do my best to answer them. We just want to say thank you for shopping here with us at Partzilla, and we will see you in the next video. Y'all have a great day.